This episode of The Rookie Hunter is sponsored by North Arm Knives. North Arm Knives are handcrafted and sold directly through a father and son team right here in British Columbia. Choose from a selection of outdoor knives, kitchen knives, and the brand new folding knife from northarmknives.com. They ship internationally and guarantee all their work. Callie and I use their products and give them our stamp of approval. Go to northarmknives.com.
One time, and every time I would step in the water with my waders, and every time I did, there's a family of otters that we get kind of territorial, and they'd swim over in a flying V like geese.
Oh, really?
And they swim right towards you, but then they disappear, and all you see is bubbles, kind of like beavers or whatever. And then they pop up again, and when they pop up, they're breathing like,
oh yeah,
and you can hear them coming towards you, right? So I took off.
Nice.
I don't know what they're going to do.
I love otters. They're pretty cool.
They are cool.
Yeah. It's those beavers you got to watch out for.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if I've told that story, but I got charged by a beaver fly fishing a lake in a belly boat, and I was trying to figure out chironomids, which is a whole other ball game. And there's a little island in the middle of the lake, and then I realized there's little paths coming out of the lake onto the island and like mashing down the grass. And then I figured, well, there's probably a beaver hanging out here.
Right.
Sure enough, I hear these nostrils flaring and this thing swimming towards me, and it turns out to be a beaver.
Huh.
So, and that's kind of dangerous. Like, there's been people, fly fishers, sitting in belly boats that have been bitten by beaver. You don't want to be bitten by a beaver.
No, they got some chompers on them.
No. I mean, that's a Canadian story, is chased down by a beaver.
Totally.
Right?
Oscar, my dog, he's been chased by a beaver before. It was the same thing. We're walking on like a local trail here, not too far out of town actually, and see a little beaver trail, and you could see he'd been knocking down trees and stuff like that. And Oscar could smell him, so he followed the trail, and all of a sudden Oscar came running back like 100 miles an hour, and this beaver was running after him, which is hilarious. It scared the hell out of him. He didn't know what it was.
Yeah. It was funny though, because 5 minutes before I got charged by the beaver, there's this guy and his son in a boat, and they were reeling in a fish, and this big loon, just before they got the fish in the boat, because the loons will follow you around the lake because they know you're going to catch fish, and then they steal the fish off your hook. Right? Meanwhile, I'm getting chased by a beaver. I was just waiting for it to rain toonies or something.
Oh, nice.
Hockey sticks.
Yeah, no kidding. On that note, Kelly, this is episode 30, which is a nice solid number. And we're also celebrating our first Rookie Hunter podcast birthday. So cheers to that.
Time flies.
It does fly. For those I want to give a big shout out to Brian from Gritty Bowman. He shared our post about Jeff Lander being on the podcast. So I know we've got a lot of new listeners, especially from the States. So if you guys are wondering about this show and what it's all about, we haven't really explained it in a while. My name is Mike Peterson.
Kelly Molnar.
And we're fairly new to hunting. We've been doing it for a while now. What are we at, 3.5 years?
Yep.
Something like that. And we decided to do this podcast. Well, originally, I think it was an excuse for you and I to hang out and have a couple of beers and document our experiences and try and use this as a tool to reach out to more experienced people because we don't have a mentor.
And force us to research some stuff on our own, right?
Yeah. So it was really an effort to kind of learn more about hunting, because if we're going to be broadcasting this and putting it out there, we have a duty to really research the things that we're talking about. We're not always right, as we've learned as we go along here. We've changed our opinions and that, but it's all been good. So throughout the year, anyone I think some guys they've wrote in and said that they've listened to all of our episodes within like a week, which is crazy. I don't know how you can listen to us for that long, but guys are doing it. And
Netflix binge.
totally. So you definitely hear us learn and evolve as hunters, and our opinions have changed, and then will continue from this point on.
I think one of the things with the podcast is, like, on one aspect, yes, we want to bring in information about learning and for ourselves and our listeners, but on the other side, it's kind of a story, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why people get hooked on kind of binge listening to it, which I find kind of cool.
It is. Yeah, it's cool to know that people are enjoying this, because
I don't want to like give out any spoilers to if this is someone just listening to this episode, but
right.
I mean, you look at episode 1, 2, 3, and then you look at episode like 18, 19, where we actually get an animal and we podcast from the field.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a cool timeline in itself, right? To go from point A to point B and
get to
document
hear our frustrations and our excitement and everything that goes along with it. So,
and also the just the skill in podcasting itself. You can hear that.
We get better, yeah.
You can hear that growing along the way too. I listened to those first episodes. I'm like, oh man. Not to say that we're pros right now, but
we've improved, I hope. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's been fun, and we really like to hear from you guys. We've been getting a lot of emails. I don't think we're gonna have time to go through emails today, but our inbox is like overflowing right now with stuff we haven't read and people we want to get back to. And yeah, the other thing we should mention, Kelly's like air drumming over here, is that all the music that as far as our intro and our ad for North Arm Knives, we do all the music. I own a recording studio, so we're kind of lucky that way. This is another reason why we can get good podcast audio too. But yeah, so all that stuff, Kelly and I did. The intro song, I think we put that together, recorded it, mixed, and mastered it within like 2 or 3 hours or something like that, which is pretty fast.
Yeah. And then you called your buddy and he threw some banjo.
Yeah, we had a guy rip by and do some banjo real quick. He never even heard it.
Yeah.
And put that together. But Cal, you unearthed an old video of us playing in our old band.
Yeah, I think it's from like 2008 or something, like the college days. So maybe I'll post that on Instagram and preface it with, as discussed on the... It'll be out of nowhere otherwise, but if anyone's interested. But the North Arm Knives, one of the things with that one is there's a little slide part in there, but we didn't have a slide. So I ended up just using your
little microphone.
There's a little microphone. We were using a screwdriver there for a little while, but it didn't work out too well.
Yeah. You got to get creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's anything that has really left our blood either, right? The music side. So
not at all.
When we get the opportunity to record something and use it in this podcast, that's always fun for us too.
Yeah, for sure. Tammy's going to be joining us in just a couple of minutes here. So I want to let people know, Kelly, that we're doing I think the plan is to do 4 episodes, as long as we can get everyone's timelines and schedules lined up, that are going to be at the BC Interior Sportsman Show. And I think we already mentioned that we're going to be emceeing the Saturday show, which is April 8th. And with each of these episodes, we're going to be giving away a pair of tickets. So one thing we haven't discussed is how you're going to win those tickets. So I'm thinking, this being a food based episode, if you guys are on Instagram, what you can do is just upload a photo of your most successful wild game cooking experience, whatever that looks like, and tag BC Interior Sportsman Show. And they're online here. And also tag us in there. You can also send us an email with your photo, if you're not on Instagram, to the rookiehunterpodcast@gmail.com.
You can also tag Saucy's Got Game on Instagram too.
Yeah. We put up a post of a roast that I did, and her handles in there. So if you're looking for her, but just look up Saucy's Got Game, tag her in there, as well as BC Interior Sportsman Show and the Rookie Hunter, and you'll be entered. But if you're not on there, you can just send us your photo or recipe to the Rookiehunterpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll do it.
The other contest we have going on, North Arm Knives, check us out on Instagram.
Yep.
Basically, submit a photo, your favorite outdoor photo from 2016, and hashtag North Arm Knives and Rookie Hunter. And there's no real deadline that we've set on that, so
Just keep them coming.
yeah.
Been some good ones. Same thing, if you're not on Instagram, just email us your photos and we'll post them on your behalf.
What else we got going on? Well, you went to an event yesterday.
Yeah,
And
we'll talk more about that with the BC Wildlife Federation.
Yeah, we don't have to get into too much details, but Jesse, who was on the podcast earlier, works for the BC Wildlife Federation, and he's trying to get a younger group of guys and a network together to start thinking about and making their voices heard with regards to the state of natural resource management in BC. So keep your ears open, because we're going to be sending out some information and letting people know how they can get onto the mailing list for that stuff.
Yeah. Perfect.
So
Good stuff.
I mean, I think the overall message is the wildlife populations and the budgets for wildlife management has steadily been declining. Sometimes I think it's like 54% since about 1998. Whereas everything else, provincial budget wise, even if you remove healthcare, social services, and education, it's still those budgets are still doubling, right? So there's a big discrepancy in kind of where those budgets are going, and we're going to be providing some more information on those topics in the
for sure
days to come.
So we won't get too far into that because we want to make sure we get all the information correct. Last bit of business here. I'm going to dedicate this episode to my old man. Today would have been his 71st birthday. If you want to hear the story behind how this all came together in that, check out, I think it's episode 3, and you'll find out why if you haven't listened to that one. So
we should cheers on that too.
Cheers. Yeah, this one's for
Cheers to
Dale. And this is the whole reason why we're doing this, I think. So look at that. Perfect timing. There's Tammy. Tammy.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. Finally got it.
Yeah, we were worried that we lost you.
Well, I got to work for everything.
That's right, yeah. So how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. You're just coming off another sportsman show?
Yes. I had to decompress for a couple of days, but now I'm back again.
Fair enough. Nice. You're getting ready to head out to Kelowna in, I guess, a month's time now, eh?
Yes,
for the
that's right.
BC Interior Sportsman Show. So we caught you there last year doing some demos and stuff like that. Are you going to be doing something similar this year?
No, I think we're going to change it up a little bit. I haven't really decided on what protein I'm going to work with. I'll probably do a venison dish.
Nice.
For sure. And more than likely something a little bit more exotic like kangaroo or crocodile.
Nice.
Good. Well, we're looking forward to it for sure. So let's backtrack a little bit. We want to get a bit of your history and how you got into all this stuff. So let's start with cooking. How did you get into cooking?
Well, actually, cooking is a big part of my family's life. My dad is a chef. So, his love and passion for food was always in the house. So I started cooking at a young age. And my mom is a savory cook. And she taught me a lot about different ethnic cuisines. So we would go and, try Indian food and Moroccan food and Greek, Italian. We would take trips to Vancouver, to Chinatown, and pick up all sorts of different spices and products and bring it home and create our own dim sum and things like that. So that's really where it began.
Great. Yeah. So it's deep-rooted then, obviously.
Yes.
Good. So that led you to MasterChef Canada. Was that a few years back now then?
Yeah, that was a couple years ago. Really what started MasterChef is, I would watch these, Food Network shows and think to myself, man, I would do so well if I could be one of those people. But they didn't have a MasterChef Canada at the time.
Right.
And, I would always watch and I would look at the baskets and try to figure something out, within 30 seconds. And, I would do things in my own kitchen, just trying to, push the envelope on myself to see if I could, make something in 20 minutes. So, yeah, I applied for MasterChef Canada, and there's usually 10 or 15,000 people across Canada that apply.
Wow.
And in British Columbia, I was invited to a closed audition, and there was approximately 70 British Columbians that were picked. And from that, they chose me as one of their top 50. So I went to Toronto and, had to go through the ringer there. They had to whittle it down to 16 contestants in less than a week.
Wow.
So it is stressful. And one thing that's funny is that my signature dish was actually an elk carpaccio.
Okay.
And what's funny about that is that everybody else is boiling vegetables and creating these marinades and doing all this stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm going in there and I'm going to serve these judges raw meat. So I thought, man, I'm really taking a risk here.
And was it well received then?
Actually, I was one of two that got all three yeses.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So I did an elk carpaccio with a basil fig balsamic. I actually smoked it on set with some cherry chips, and I kind of created my own smoke within the kitchen. I smoked out the entire studio.
Nice. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I love that dish. It's actually one of my favorites.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds delicious. So before that, were you cooking professionally, or is it something that you've just sort of always done on your own and decided to try and take it to the next level?
Well, when it comes to I have a very large family. And so when we get together, there's usually, up to 50 of us together. So I'm always in the kitchen helping with my dad. And I actually have worked for Safeway since I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I've worked in the food industry my whole life. And I did a lot of catering through Safeway. And learned how to be fast, learned how to be efficient, learned lots about different salamis, different cuts of meat, all the different types of cheeses, like all of those things, that has been bred into me over all these years. And I also worked in the meat department, and I, wrapped meat and learned about all the different cuts, and
Perfect.
also worked in the seafood department too. So all of that experience really helped me. And, and I just love cooking. I mean, you either love it or it's a chore. And for me, it's a passion and a love.
Right.
And it's one of my favorite things to do is to feed lots of people and make them happy.
Nice. Tammy, did cooking come first or did hunting come first?
Well, my dad was a big duck hunter growing up. So hunting was always a part of our family. I would say that cooking was probably more predominant at the beginning. And then, unfortunately, things happen in life. And back in 2009, my husband was killed in a workplace accident. And I was left with, 5 children, and I was pregnant with our 6th child.
Oh, wow.
And so that is really what catapulted me into my hunting life. Is I thought to myself, he's not here anymore. And it's me and these 6. And I need to learn how to, take care of them if things go bad. And so that's kind of where it really began, where I started, I got my hunting license and I got got everything that I needed for that and started harvesting my own animals. And from that came crazy recipes.
Yeah, I bet.
So that's really where my love came. And I thought, wild meat isn't always about stews and comfort food and chilies and things like that. You can be very creative with this meat. And so that's really what I've focused my life on since then, is just creating amazing recipes with every part of the animal, not just the good parts. The parts that some people don't think about either.
Yeah, I don't know how much you know about Kelly and I, but we're fairly new to this. It's kind of been like the last 3.5 years that we've gotten into hunting.
Oh,
So
nice.
we're really like, we both enjoy cooking, but when you get into the wild game side of things, you're sort of learning all over again. So it's been a lot of fun for us to kind of learn how to cook this meat. And there's been some things that haven't worked out and some other things that have worked out really well. But that's part of the fun in doing this. It's unfortunate if you overcook something, but we haven't wasted anything. We still eat it anyway. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. And then we talk about this a lot. There's just so much more pride when you've harvested an animal yourself and you've butchered it and you've processed it and then you're feeding it to your friends and family. It just takes it to a whole new level of pride
Absolutely.
and excitement and everything like that. So
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so obviously that's your path towards Saucy's Got Game, which is a show I believe you've got in production now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. That's right. It's going to be all about wild game cooking, although there is going to be some seafood in there as well because I am a passionate seafood chef. I love cooking with seafood.
Nice.
I'm really good at it.
Nice.
It's all about not overcooking, and I am so good at that because I like everything juicy.
Right. That's what we're
I like
learning.
my
Yeah.
I like my prawns to pop in my mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like they shouldn't be like rubber erasers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're based in BC?
I'm in British Columbia.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been here my whole life, born and raised.
Nice.
So we did a bit of research, and we found, I think it was just the pilot episode for the show that you had up. So when can people expect to see it?
Well, it's going to happen this year. I can't really gauge which month is going to happen.
Right.
I have my kitchen studio, my production company. We've got our 13 episode plan. Everything is going. So as soon as it's all done, I'll make sure to let you know. But in the meantime, we're just developing my YouTube channel at the moment, just so I can get something out there while we're waiting to get the production going.
Great. Yeah, keep us posted. We'll gladly share some of that stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be a good. It's going to be a great show.
Good.
And,
We look forward to it.
It's been picked up by four networks already. So it's just a matter of broadening from that. But some of the the channels that I would like to have the show are, not big channels, but just channels that would really use the information, like Dawson Creek and Terrace and places like that. That are smaller. They may have 20,000 people that watch, but they use the meat, they harvest it, they live on it, and so it would be great to show them different things rather than concentrating on the bigger networks. I mean, I'm excited just to share what I've got to offer.
Yeah, for sure. So this being the rookie hunter, there's a lot of guys who are just starting to bring home animals for the first time. I think one of the biggest mistakes that guys make is overcooking the meat because it's such a lean cuts and stuff like that. What advice do you have for people so they don't get discouraged the first time they cook something?
Well, it really depends on what they're cooking. Just to kind of, just for information purposes, there's always been issues with trichinosis. And, trichinosis is something that is, can be predominant in black bear and cougar and wild boar. And it's important to kill all that bacteria. And because now we have so much farmed pork, the cases of trichinosis within eating pork are very low. But there seems to be, an influx of hunters that are getting sick from trichinosis. So it's important that when you're cooking either bear, cougar, or wild boar, that you make sure that the internal temperature reaches 160 degrees. You cannot kill trichinosis with freezing. You can't throw the meat in the freezer and expect it to die. It doesn't. You have to cook it well. So those three animals, you have to make sure that you cook well. As far as venison and moose and elk, those ones we can keep juicy. And, the best way I do it, really, when you're first starting out, use your temperature. Use your temperature gauge. Don't be shy to stuff it in there. If I was going to do like a backstrap, say I was going to do like a moose or an elk or a venison backstrap, how I would do it is I would, cover it with kosher salt and black pepper, some types of dried herbs if you wish, like basil or oregano, something like that. Yep. And I would put olive oil in a pan, get it nice and hot. I would pan sear all sides. So it's nice and golden brown and beautiful on the outside. You want it nice and crispy, and you want all that juice to stay inside. And then I would take it, put it on a cookie sheet with some tin foil, and put it in your oven at 350, and wait for the internal temperature to reach about 140. 135 to 140 is going to give you medium rare. And then you take it out, tent it, leave it, and you're going to see some of the juices flowing out from underneath it. You can also tell by feel, and I do a lot of cook by feel. Just because I've been doing it for so long, I know that if I'm touching a steak and I'm pressing it with my finger and it's like sinking, I know that it's not quite done yet. Right. It gets a little springy, I know that it's done. And obviously, if I can't stab it with a knife, then I've overdone it.
Yeah, I had one case of that where I pretty much could have broke a window with the roast that I cooked, but I think I ended up cutting it up and then marinating it and making tacos in it. It was actually really good in the end, so I salvaged it.
Yeah, so I mean, really, your temperature gauge is your friend. If you're nervous by gauging it by feel, just get a thermometer. They're cheap, $6. Get a nice
Yeah.
thermometer, shove it in there, but don't let it go past 140 because while it's sitting there, it's still cooking. That's one thing that people forget. They think, okay, now it's perfect, but in the next 10 minutes, it's going to continue to cook.
Yeah,
You want to make
exactly.
sure you pull it out a little early. Like I like my meat rare. I really do. So, I may do it to, 130 and because I like it juicy. And
Do you,
especially with the back strap because it tapers. So the ends are going to be more cooked than the middle anyway.
right.
So you just leave those end pieces for people that like it cooked, but, save the inside for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
And always, you can always complement it. Like my kids, especially, I love making fruit compotes, and with either, whitetail or mule deer, blacktail, moose elk, anything like blueberry, gooseberries, sour cherries, all those things go so well with wild meat on the side, just like a mango chutney with an Indian dish.
Right. I think sauces overall is something that a lot of guys might be intimidated by.
Yeah, and it's really not that hard. Like I've
Yeah.
got like I have a cookbook out. It's called Around the Woods in 30 Plates, and it's all about venison. And I do have some compote dishes in there. It's very simple. Really, all you have to do is go down to your grocery store if you don't harvest them yourselves. You've got blueberries or mixed berry of whatever kind. Put it in a pot, add some water, add a little bit of sugar, give it a stir, and just let it break down. Stir it till it gets to a certain temperature, and then keep your water levels up a little bit because it'll start to recede, and you want to keep stirring. And you just do that until it starts to break down, and then you can use a potato masher because you still want there to be some chunks of fruit. You don't want to puree it. It's nice. And then if you find that it's a little too watery, it's easy to add a little bit of cornstarch and water just to thicken it up a little bit. And I use fresh herbs, so I'll do like a blueberry compote, but I'll add chopped basil.
Okay.
And or I'll add oregano to it or something like that. It just adds another element, which is beautiful.
Nice.
And also with cooking, if you're cooking like moose steaks or and I do a lot of stuff, especially because it's been such a hard winter and a lot of my cooking has been inside. One thing to elevate the flavor of a good steak or anything is to use duck fat. Rather than olive oil or butter. I mean, the duck fat is just beautiful, and it really does make a nice crisp on the outside, and it's so full of flavor, and it really adds a lot to the dish.
Have you used bear fat at all to cook with?
Oh, I am so happy you asked. I love bear.
Good.
It's one of my favorite things to cook. It's one of my kids' favorite things to cook. And over the years, I've been fortunate enough to tag out on bears. Normally, it's I usually tag out in the spring. So I haven't had a lot of opportunity to work with a fall bear. All the spring bears that I've gotten have been quite lean. And, I've been able to make some beautiful sausage out of it. And I've actually made a smoked corn bear. Was another thing that I did. If you just look it up online, or anybody can get in contact with me. But you just make a nice pickling brine, put your bear roast in there, seal it, and leave it in your fridge, and you flip it every day for 9 days.
Wow.
And just allow it to marinate or to brine, and it's going to turn like this beautiful, bright, reddy pink after it's done. And then I cold smoked mine for about 8 hours at about 50 degrees, and then I boiled it because you want to get rid of some of that salt.
Right.
So when you boil it, and then I actually dumped the water out and added a little bit more, but it tasted exactly like corned beef. It was just delicious. But with my fall bear, I actually got a fall bear last fall up in Vanderhoof, and the fat off of a bear is actually considered one of the best pastry lards.
Oh, really?
It's fantastic. Now, out of the fall bear that I got, I rendered about 15 pounds of fat. A lot of fat. He was fat.
Perfect.
He was living in an oat field.
Nice.
But anyways, I rendered it all down, and not only do you have this gorgeous fat that I've put it through a cheesecloth a few times, just to get rid of all the little crispy bits. But I tell you, the crackling that comes off of that is so delicious. I actually pulled it out, threw salt and black pepper on it, and my kids and I were just chewing on it. It was so good. And I even kept it and vacuum sealed it to use as a crumble on other things, to try to put it into other recipes. But the lard is not only good for pastries, but it's also good for frying, like for frying French fries, whatever. It's a delicious fat. But one thing that I did do with my batch is I actually created salve. And I did, I did a lot of research on bear fat and thought, like what else is it utilized for? I mean, First Nations have utilized the bear for centuries. And one of the things that they do is make a bear salve for muscle and joint pain. And they say that it's really good for arthritis. So my mother has bad arthritis. So I thought, I'm going to make some batches. So I did some eucalyptus and a couple different ones. You got to keep it in the fridge or keep it in the freezer because it is soft. And I made one mistake, though, and I added vanilla as one, smell to the salve. But every time I open up the jar, it just smells like vanilla bacon. I'm just like, it just doesn't smell medicinal. So don't add vanilla if you're making a salve.
It's good to know.
Mike and I haven't got a bear yet, but I think the plan is to get one this spring. So I think it's going to happen. I got a good feeling about it.
Yeah.
Is this mostly black bear that you've been getting, or have you tried grizzly bear at all? And if so,
I have not.
Okay.
I actually did go on a grizzly bear hunt last fall.
Yep.
I did get a tag and headed up to Hazelton.
Okay.
Near the Babine and where the Babine River and the Skeena meet. But the hunting area that my tag was good for was extremely thick. And like if you were to drive a quad, like the leaves would be, the trees would be smacking you in the shoulders. Like that's how narrow the quad trails were. I did see one grizzly, a young grizzly, the first scouting day. And he was kind of in the middle of a road and he kind of looked left, looked right and just took off, and that was the only experience I've had with grizzly hunting. But black bear, I mean, I take my kids, my daughter, when she was 14 years old, she harvested her first black bear. And, that was an amazing hunt. That was, she just got her license and took her out and we saw this bear and he was a good size and, she's so calm and she got ready and she took the shot and didn't realize it because we didn't have our rangefinder with us. Everything happened so fast,
Right.
And when we rangefinded it was 320 yards.
Holy.
And it was her first shot, her first bear. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
So that bear is on our wall at home.
Perfect.
Nice.
But one thing too that's great when you have a good, I have a great relationship with First Nations around my area. I do a lot of catering events for the Skowlook First Nations and for the land advisory councils and stuff because they love wild meat and I love cooking it for them.
Right.
But one thing that's great about having having a good reputation is I can utilize more than just the meat. And I've been able to donate my some of my hides for their ceremonial purposes, which makes me very happy. And I've been able to also donate the bones to the First Nations kids during their camps where they make this game called slahal. And it's actually it's an ancient native bone game. And they carve and make designs on the bones. And they're like game pieces. So I feel great that that my bear, that they feel that my bear has been treated with respect and that that my heart's in the right place, that they would be able to use all this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize with bear is that you can utilize a lot more of the animal. I think a lot of people might be under the impression that it's just like a trophy hunt and people are just shooting bears for the fun of it. But the other thing too is that people often think that black bear is something that you wouldn't want to eat. We hear it all the time, even in the hunting community, that it's it's disgusting. You would never want to eat a black bear. So when you're
it's kind of more wise tales. It's almost.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, like your spring bear, as soon as they come out of hibernation, I mean, they're eating grass.
Exactly.
They're just eating grass, and then from grass it goes to to berries and things. And I mean, they're opportunistic feeders, so they're not going out looking for a deer to eat.
Right.
Like they're more vegetarian than they are, carnivores.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Kelly and I are looking forward to when we do get a bear is to, I think it comes down to processing it and cooking it properly, but to change some people's minds as far as what they think of black bear.
Like a lot of people think that they're under the impression that, because the bear is part of the pig family, that it tastes like pork.
Right.
But I don't find that at all. I actually find that it tastes more like beef. It's very mild. I've never had a taste of game in bear meat before.
Wow.
A lot of times when I cook with bear meat, another thing too to remember when you're cooking with bear, or if you're making sausage with bear, make sure to use beef. as your secondary meat. Don't use,
Okay.
because if you use pork, I mean, I made that mistake years ago and I made a bear kielbasa sausage. Now it tasted fantastic, but it was too oily.
Right.
It just had too much oil in it. So make sure to cut it with beef rather than pork. You'll have a better outcome. And also to remember too that out of all of the animals, bear actually has the highest percentage of protein.
Right.
Venison and moose and elk, they are all around the same. They all have more protein than beef, but bear actually has got more, which is interesting.
So if we go back to let's go back to venison for a minute. I think part of the problem that people have is there's certain cuts that are cooked in different ways. I might be off track here. I'm kind of interested to see what your response is going to be, but my thoughts are like, I typically treat the front quarters, neck, and ribs is kind of more of a low and slow cooking, whereas the rear quarters and the tenderloins and all that is kind of a direct high heat type cooking.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is that accurate, or are you?
Well, when you're cooking with better cuts like tenderloin and stuff like that, it's a high heat pan sear, and then to try to keep the moisture inside. When you're working with an inside round or an outside round roast, those are going to be a little bit tougher. Sirloin roast is going to be fine, but the inside and outside, you can cook it low and slow if you want. You can cook a tenderloin low and slow if you want, but I mean, the thing. The longer you let it cook, it's going to start to break down. It has to, the fibers have got to break down. So if I do but even with my inside or outside round roast that I cook, I always sear everything. I rarely just throw a roast in the crock pot. And a lot of people actually throw them in frozen. They'll throw them in just frozen and put a bunch of vegetables and beef broth and, canned tomatoes or whatever over top of it and just cook it like that. But I like to sear everything because it just holds in all that juice. And some of the other like the tougher cuts, or if you're deboning it yourself at home and you're not actually going to a butcher and have a proper saw, a lot of people have just deboned meat. And after you've cut it all up and you vacuum sealed it, sometimes you don't know what's what.
Yeah, for sure.
It just happens that way. So a lot of times, if I get a roast and I cut all the silver skin off of it and whatever, and I'm kind of looking at it thinking, this looks like a tough cut. It looks like something that's probably not going to be that juicy. A lot of times, what I do is I actually butterfly the roast and I mallet it. So I butterfly the roast, open it up, take a mallet, pound it down, and then fill it. And I have one recipe that I love to do, and I actually fill the roast with a pork stuffing. So this is what I do with either musky cuts, from a musky buck, or, cuts that aren't as nice. And so you butterfly it, you mallet it out. I put olive oil, different types of fresh herbs and spices inside. And then I create a pork stuffing with sage and cranberries and garlic and, sauteed onions and things like that. And then sometimes I stuff it with a sausage, like with a chorizo sausage, or I did a bear roast that I actually used the bear sausage that I made. And then you roll it all up nice. So you've got the pork fat, penetrating the meat from the inside, and then I'll roll it with bacon on the outside. So I've got fat coming from all directions.
That sounds unbelievable.
Well, and what's wonderful about that roast too is that you don't have to add anything to that gravy. Like with the juice that comes off of that, all you need is a bit of water and cornstarch or flour, and it is perfect all on its own.
It's like a turducken.
Yeah, pork. I don't know. Pork turducken.
That's a good idea. I think. You pull stuff out of the freezer, and sometimes, there's so many options, but it's hard to think of them in the moment. So you end up just throwing something in the oven and hoping for the best.
And a lot of it takes a little bit of time. Like, one thing that's kind of underutilized with wild game is appetizers. When people think of wild game, they think of the main meal. But, I do a lot of different types of appetizers with it. And one thing that I think is underutilized with your wild meat is the marrow.
Right.
A lot of people don't use the marrow. And you can create some really nice stuff out of the marrow. If you take your wild game to the butcher, ask them if you can keep the bones and just get them to cut them lengthwise. And you'll get nice lengthwise strips where you can, you take your marrow bones, You put them in a Tupperware container with some water and put it in your fridge. And you just, every once in a while when you think of it, just drain the water and put fresh water in. And you'll see that the water turns kind of pink where the blood's kind of coming out. You just keep on rinsing it. And then by the next day when you're ready to go, I do something, it's like a baked marrow with maple syrup and a parsley salad, and it's delicious. So you take your marrow bones, you sprinkle some kosher salt and black pepper on them, throw them in the oven at 375 until the marrow is golden brown and bubbling, and then take it out. You can either use maple sugar or maple syrup, and then I throw it back and put it on broil. And so you've got this beautiful crust of maple on top of this marrow. And then you create this parsley salad with just finely diced parsley, finely diced scallions, lemon juice, some kosher salt. So you've got that acidity, mix that all together, and then you just layer it on top of the marrow. And you serve it with crostinis, and people just take a spoon and just scoop it out. My daughter says to me, "Mom, this tastes like dessert."
Sounds unbelievable.
I'm hungry.
Yeah. We picked a bad time to call you because we haven't eaten dinner yet. So I'm starving now.
You can also make marrow butter as well.
Right.
And I do a lot of different types of marrow butters. And, it stays in the freezer for a long time. You can do something called like a marrow gremolata on a crostini, which is like you take the marrow butter and you mix it in with breadcrumbs and you bake it in the oven so they all absorb and soak up all that marrow. And you do like a gremolata has got those marrow, the crumbs with the same kind of thing with garlic and Parmesan cheese and lots of lemon juice and parsley. And you take the marrow butter and you smear it on the crostini, and then you put that gremolata on top, and it's kind of crunchy and sour and buttery, and it's super.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you done any marrow broths or anything like that?
Marrow broth?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm not I've done lots. Like any bones or anything that I have left over from any of my animals, I do stocks.
Nice.
So I'll take all the bones. You know what I do? Actually, I do more than that. After I've cleaned all of my meat, taken off all the sinew, taken off all the silver skin and all the bits that I don't want, that I'm not going to make anything with, I put everything in that stock. All that other stuff that I wouldn't eat.
Right.
But it still has flavor. It still has bits of meat on it. I put it all in the stock, and I'll put in cranberries and, celery and onions and carrots. And, if I have some root vegetables, I'll throw them in there and different herbs, lots of herbs, and, strain that out. And nothing's better than a gelatinous, broth. And then I usually vacuum seal it and I throw it in the freezer, and I'll use it for all my soups or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something that we're starting to lean towards, is really just trying to make more use of the animal. Like we try and do the best job we can, but each year I think we're just going to be using more and more and more.
Have you used the heart yet?
Yeah, we did one heart, but it wasn't the the best thought out. It was kind of an afterthought, so it wasn't that great. But yeah, it's and then the tongue is the other thing that we want to try.
Liver, heart, and tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any advice for tongue?
You just have to make sure that you strip, that you skin it.
Right.
You got to take all the nubby pieces and everything off. A lot of people have smoked tongue or smoked tongue chips they'll use, or they'll do, put it in soups or stews.
Right.
One thing that I'm just going to get back on the heart.
Sure.
I love heart, but one great recipe that I have is actually an oxtail heart soup. And it really is delicious. That combination together is wonderful. And when you open up a heart and get all the ventricles and everything out and clean it up and cube it up and throw it in a stew with oxtail, holy cow, is it ever good? Nice. And then I usually serve it with it'll either have brown rice in it or barley, something like that. Mm-hmm. But the flavor is incredible. And the livers, I do a lot of liver pâtés. With I've done venison pâté. I've got a few recipes in my cookbook as well. A lot of people too even slice the tongue really, really thin and just pan-sear and eat it like that. It's a delicious meat. It really is. Another thing too is one thing that I had just recently is a terrine, which is actually like a French. It's like a pâté, but it's coarser.
Right.
And the French usually have pork and a wild game meat of theirs, either deer or wild boar. something like that. And they chop it up and they make it into like a log, like a press. Like they press it into like a loaf pan,
Right.
and serve it on crackers. It's usually served either, room temperature normally. And, I had one the other day actually that my kids were eating, and it was a pork and kangaroo terrine with currants.
Nice.
And it was delicious. And I'm excited to make that. Another thing that you might be interested in is last year I was invited to go to Sweden on a moose hunt.
Oh, wow.
And I was there for a couple of weeks, and I got to harvest a nice moose. Out here, in BC, we have, anywhere from, 150,000 moose. And in Sweden, there's 300 to 400,000.
Wow.
They have a massive moose population out there. So I got to hang out in northern Sweden. So I was right on the Finnish border. So I got to meet the Laplanders, and it was so awesome. These people are rugged, and boy, they can survive in anything.
Nice.
And one thing that I learned about, and I would gladly share the recipe with you and show you how to do it. It's called groupie, and groupie is a Sápmi dish, a Laplander dish, which is actually made of meat and lung, kidney, and liver. And it's all blended together. And they wrap it in the lacing of the stomach. And they cold smoke it for 18 hours. And they cut it into slabs, and they pan fry it. And they serve it with a flatbread that they make on hot rocks.
Wow.
And the flavor of that, like I had never tried lung before, but the flavor of that meat is unbelievable. So I actually got the recipe. It's like an old recipe. And I'm excited for the fall because I'm going to utilize those parts.
Right.
And create this Canadian groupie.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and they also hang their heart, and they actually eat it like beef jerky. So
Interesting.
they actually salt their heart for 24 hours, and then they wash it, like rinse it for 24 hours, and then they put these ropes, and they actually cut it into 4 pieces, and then they hang it because they've got optimum temperature, perfect temperature for drying out there.
Right.
So when I went hunting, I always had a chunk of moose heart in my pocket.
Nice.
And every time I got hungry, I just take a little sliver and just chew on it. It's just exactly like beef jerky.
What are your thoughts around like drying and aging meat? Because I know you can do it up front, but you can also like butcher your animal, put it in the freezer, and take it out and age it in the fridge afterwards. I've heard.
What do you mean by aging? You mean by like if like a 30-day Angus? Is that kind of what you're thinking of?
Yeah, like I know some of the old timers, the hunters, they have. I know most of us don't have access to a big fridge that we can throw a deer in for 30 days, but
No.
I mean, Mike and I are basically. I mean, we butcher a lot of it ourselves, and then we wrap it up and throw it in the freezer, and then we take it out and cook it within 5 to 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I know there's a lot of people that get stuck on that topic of how long do you have to leave it before you start cooking it, and is there an advantage to actually aging or drying meat for a long time?
That's a really interesting question because even beyond borders, people have different ways of aging meat. And some people, like in Sweden, with us, we hang them by the legs and we stretch the meat out. We stretch it to soften it and to stretch it out, so it's softer. But they don't. They actually hang their moose from the hip bone, so the legs are actually just kind of limp, which I thought was quite interesting. But they can also hang their meat for a lot longer because they've got the perfect humidity. It's cold, like perfect temperature. They can hang their meat for a month. It's all about temperature and humidity. I know with my I got an elk last fall, and I brought it to a butcher friend of mine because it was just so huge.
This is a lot of work.
Tackling this, and he had it hang for me for 14 days.
Okay.
So it hung for 14 days in his big cooler. So it is great to age it, But even if you get a young, like if you go hunting with your kids and they get a young deer, the meat is just so soft and beautiful already. It all depends on the age too.
Right.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Wow. There's just so much to learn about cooking and hunting in general. So it's
you never stop learning either.
Exactly. And that's the whole point behind the name of the podcast for Kelly and I, is that we want to continue learning, is, for as long as we're alive, basically, there's always going to be something to learn. So,
Oh, absolutely. I actually started doing private cooking classes because I had so many people interested in learning how to cook wild food. So I started doing some private cooking classes, and my first class actually was 24 women,
nice.
like husband or wives and girlfriends of hunters. And it was a fantastic night. And I think I did like 8 different recipes. Like I just kept going.
Nice.
So fun.
You just need a webcam in the kitchen, and
Yes, exactly.
you'll have 200 people or more watching.
Yeah. So before we wrap things up here, we had some listener submitted questions, and you've already kind of touched on some of these, so you can answer them in a couple sentences if you want. But the main one we kept getting over and over is just, how do you avoid drying out lean meats? So you touched on that. Basically, using a thermometer is the best way to do it. But any other thoughts on that one?
Well, just just with utilizing other types of fat
Right.
to keep it soft, right? Like the duck fat is a great example. It just keeps it moist. But if it's oven cooking, definitely you need to watch your temperature.
Right.
It's all about temperature. You don't want to overcook it. You just have to watch the temperature. Make sure 135, 140 max.
Yeah, I find
It's funny that people are ashamed almost to use a meat thermometer, but it's like, come on.
And eventually you're going to just know the feel.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to have the temperature. Like, there's nobody out there that sticks a thermometer in their roast and doesn't take their thumb and like touch it. Like everybody touches it.
Right.
And eventually you're going to go, yeah, it feels right. It feels about like it did last time.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best piece of advice, is that practice makes perfect. And with the cooking that I've done, I get a little bit stressed out because I'm just so worried about it. It's such a precious piece of meat to me, and there's so much involved with it that I get worried that, I want to cook it more on the rare side, but if I'm cooking for other people, I'm worried that they're going to be offended by how rare it's going to be. And so it's really how you like pitch it to them and say, hey, like, this is the reasons why we cook it more on the rare side, and you're going to enjoy it more. And the other thing too, I found is like, a matter of 5 minutes sometimes when you're cooking something in the oven can make all the difference, from it being, at the right temperature to being overcooked in a hurry. So it's fast. You got to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's other things that you can cook too that just take with minutes. And one of them is like I do Maui venison skewers. Well, I use bison too, but and that really is just, again, finding a piece of meat that you're not too happy with, slicing it into nice ribbons.
Yeah.
And putting it in a marinade, for at least 45 minutes to an hour, if not overnight. And I love I love Asian flavors. I love all those types of flavor. Like, I like everything. So I like to experiment. And this is one of the things I loved, because you leave it in a marinade. It's like, trying to think of it off the top of my head, but, soy sauce and sesame oil, a little bit of brown sugar, some lime juice, some garlic, some ginger. And you mix it all together and throw those ribbons of meat inside it and just let it go. And then you skewer them on bamboo skewers and just, pan sear them. And you'll find that the marinade will get kind of syrupy and kind of create this beautiful sauce on them. And they only take like maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes aside.
Right.
They're done like that. And then serve them with, lime wedges and fresh cilantro. And they're just an awesome little appetizer, easy to make.
Yeah.
And they stay juicy. Like, same thing. Like, it just takes a minute and a half. You don't have to go crazy.
Right. Good. Okay, we'll rip through a few more questions here. Next one we had was tips on cooking grouse. There's people that attempted it, found it was dry and gamey. So they're wondering how they can avoid that and cook something that's a little better.
Stringy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing. You don't want to overcook it.
Exactly.
All about not overcooking.
Yeah. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, for me, I do a lot of, you can actually steam it a little bit.
Okay.
I do a lot of butter basting. Like, I like to butter baste my my grouse.
You can't go wrong with butter.
No, you can't. And I do mine with like a few ones that I've done are like a butter basted a grouse with asparagus and capers and a little bit of white wine. Delicious. Just don't overcook it. But if you've got it in your pan frying it and the heat's getting up there, and they're not very thick either. Like, the breast meat's not very thick. And then just, put a little bit of wine in there, let it steam off, and just put your little lid on just for a few minutes. It's going to be juicy. It's going to have all that flavor, It's just overcooking.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
don't overcook it, And the same thing by feel as well.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard by color because some of the grouse meat is dark.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to tell. But I've had some pretty good luck with grouse. But I mean, I've cooked with things like squab and, quail and stuff like very delicate, like, ones that need special care just to kind of learn, And you can also stir fry the grouse too, cut it into cubes instead.
Yeah, and if they're trying to avoid the gamey taste, maybe that's the best way to do it. If you want to sort of separate it, you know what I mean, and put it in with a stir fry or something like that, that might be the best way to do it.
I've never found grouse to be gamey.
Yeah,
me neither.
Exactly.
It's very similar to chicken.
Yeah.
Although the texture can change a little bit, but I don't find the taste can.
No.
Yeah. I mean, it can be chewy, and it also depends on the age. Like when I was in Sweden, I was able to cook with a bird called a capercaillie.
Yeah, I've heard about those. So those are just in Sweden, right?
Yeah, and they're like a huge grouse.
Yeah, they're like turkey size.
They're like 13 pounds. They're big.
Wow.
And I got to cook with a male that was old. And it was stringy. I needed another 3 hours to break that sucker down.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it all depends because you don't know. Like, we don't know the age, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It could be a year old. It could be 5 years old. It's going to make a big difference in the pan. And you're going to say, man, that one time I cooked that grouse, it was just buttery and fell apart. It was beautiful. The next time it was like chewing on shoe leather.
It's all part of the fun.
Exactly.
Okay, we got two
So
more.
I think we got to go to Sweden as well.
Yeah, I think that's what we're getting at here. Yeah.
Well, I'm going back to Sweden this year. I'm actually involved in something called Arctic Huntress. And it's myself and other huntresses from Germany, Sweden, and the U.S.
Very cool.
And
Awesome.
we're taking part in an awesome hunt up there. I'm very excited for that.
Cool.
Two more questions if you got time.
Yes.
Okay. Cooking liver was the next one. Is there a way to improve the texture? This guy didn't like the texture of it.
Oh.
So I'm not too sure.
Pate.
Who likes liver anyway? No.
He said he liked the taste of it, but it was just the texture you couldn't get over.
Well, the texture of liver is that.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I actually have never, I'm going to be honest, I love pate. I love liverwurst. To eat a liver steak is a little hard for me. I can handle maybe one or two pieces, and I don't know if it's just way too rich for my palate, but
Right.
I can only handle a couple pieces. But I had it, one of my Yodas is what I call him. His name is Bob, and he helped me a lot with my hunting when I first started. And he took out a big deer liver, cut it into steaks. All he did was put some garlic powder on it and some salt, and he pan fried it in butter, and it was delicious. It was really, really good. And another thing too, I think it's about not overcooking it.
Right.
If you want a lighter, more like softer texture, I would not cook it for so long. I mean, I think what I would do is if I was actually first time cooking a liver, the liver's massive. So I mean, I would probably cut it into thirds and try 3 different ways, and try each of those ways and see which one you like better.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But normally when I do it, I'll soak it in buttermilk. So I'll take the liver and I'll soak it in buttermilk. But you got to make sure you get the skin off. You got to skin the liver. Maybe that might have been a problem too.
Oh, okay.
You got to skin you got to take all the skin off the outside. And then a lot of people do soak it in buttermilk, and it just improves the flavor.
Okay. One more question here. Favorite rub for big game?
Favorite rub? Oh, geez. That's really funny that's been asked, because that's probably one thing that I'm not like, that I try to avoid with my teaching, is that you don't have to just put a rub on it. There's so many other things that you can do. So I can't say that I actually have a favorite rub, although when I'm actually a pro staff for Cabela's Canada. And I was working with some of their rubs at I do wild game cooking, at their store. And one rub that I did try was something called a tequila lime, and it was really delicious. You know, and I'm not a real rub fan, like I said. I mean, if I was to create my own rub, normally it's always you know, dried herbs and basic kosher salt and black pepper. Like I keep it pretty simple, unless I do something like, you know, I do one recipe where I make a Jamaican jerk. And I love making that. And it's but to make it from scratch, it's about 9 different seasonings to create a good Jamaican jerk. But man, oh man, the flavor and the color is incredible. Well, and it actually is quite simple.
So I guess one of the alternatives would be sauce. So do you have a favorite sauce or a compote?
Well, my favorite compote is a blueberry basil that I make. I love blueberry basil when it comes to my venison. They just go hand in hand.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And another one that I love to make too is a sour cherry compote to go with my smoked goose.
Okay.
I love that. There's nothing. It's just perfect together.
It seems like the like rich berries, like blackberry or blueberry, that kind of stuff goes perfect with elk. And
oh, it does. It does. But you know, actually did a. I did a dish at the last show. It was trying to think of. I actually think it was kangaroo that I did, but I did a kangaroo masala with a mango chutney, and that was really delicious too. Because you've got all those beautiful spices in there too, like all the garam masala, which is like 5 different, like cardamom and you know, cinnamon and coriander and those types of spices, and that mixed together with the wild meat, and then with the mangoes inside there with the chilies. Oh my gosh, it's really good too.
Nice. Well, I'm chewing on my arm right now, so I think we better wrap this up and go eat something.
There's another little chunk of advice I want to give.
Sure.
You know, when it comes to grouse, a lot of times when I'm going grouse hunting, I will forage the area where they were harvested.
Oh, okay.
And I will look for, you know, for different berries and different greens and things like that they were munching on. And I will add that into my recipe as well. I actually use a lot of juniper berries in my cooking too. I do a lot of elk, like juniper berry, you know, red wine roasts and stuff.
Yeah, they're powerful.
Yeah, but you got to, yeah, exactly. And I do like a juniper gravy. So if I was to use fresh juniper, you know, I'd maybe use like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 berries and I'd mortar those. Sometimes what I normally do with juniper is I'll do a little bit, add it in the sauce, taste it, and decide whether I want to add more. Because I have done it where I've added too much and I can taste it. Although I like it, but it's probably too sharp for some people.
That's what I did the first.
Yeah.
I tried it a couple times and I think I added too much, and my wife was like easy on the juniper berries.
And even rose hips, you know, like rose hips is another great one to use.
Okay.
One thing I was going to say, in Sweden, they have all wild blueberries and they're, oh my gosh, wild blueberries, wild bear berries. Like they've got, oh my goodness, so many.
Awesome.
Well, this has been great, Tammy. I think we should probably do this again sometime because we'll have more questions for you, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure.
But we're looking forward to meeting you. We'll be at the BC Interior Sportsman Show. Actually, we'll be emceeing it on the Saturday, so we'll definitely see you there.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'll be cooking there Saturday and Sunday.
Excellent. Well, we'll be eating whatever you're cooking then.
Good. Good.
Perfect.
Now I got to live up to something.
Yeah. Good. So if people want to find you, where can they go?
As far as the show, or
yeah, website, the show, all that stuff.
Well, you know, I'm on Twitter at Saucy's Got Game. I'm on Instagram, same thing, Saucy's Got Game. As far as Facebook, I have Cabela's Pro Staff, Tammy Wood, and I've got Saucy's Got Game on there as well. It's
Perfect.
all Saucy's Got Game, everything. I do have a website, but I'm not happy with it yet.
Okay.
It's kind of like it's been in construction for a while.
Gotcha. Okay.
If anybody wants to help.
Hey, we use Squarespace. Check that out if you're looking for an easy way to set up a website. It's great. We're not sponsored by them or anything, but it's a very easy and a nice way to build a website. So
Quick
check
and
that
easy,
out.
yep.
Yeah.
It's all templated.
Yeah.
It's
Super
great.
easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. So we'll see you in about a month or so. Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I am so happy that I got to talk with you guys.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. Thanks, Tammy.
Okay, take
Have
care.
a good night. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. There it is. Do our classic, just hang up on our guest without saying anything.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're gnawing on our arms.
Yeah, I'm starving.
I think that's definitely one thing I want to get more into is two things. One of them is broth and
Yep.
stocks.
Yeah.
Because if you're a chef, no, if you're just somebody that likes to cook, you should be making your own stocks, right?
Yeah.
And you can store them, freeze them, and do whatever. And then the other thing is making your own sauce.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to rely on the rubs and everything else.
I was reading something just on like the health benefits of just like drinking broth, just the broth, nothing else. And
Like homemade broth
Yeah.
without the salt.
yeah, so just using the marrow and creating a broth out of that is really good for you.
Hmm.
So I don't know too much about it, but I was just reading something about it, found it interesting, and thought, man, we got to start making use of some of those bones. And when I think about, back to the elk bones that we didn't use, that's kind of a bummer. But it's one of those things,
Yeah.
man. It's there's so much work. I think we're up until like 2:00 in the morning just butchering that thing. It was crazy. So
Yeah.
but not
And
be
there's a bit
lazy
of a, I don't know what the word is, but like taboo to use, like some deer have chronic wasting and all that. I don't think in BC
No, I don't
it's
think
an
it's a
issue.
problem, but-
So we should be using that stuff.
Yeah.
And I know like Hank Shaw has a book out called Buck Buck Moose.
Yeah. You have that one, don't you?
I do, and it's awesome. He talks a lot about that issue, right? Like you can bring it in and get tested, or it kind of depends where you are and where
Right.
you're hunting. But that's somebody else from a food perspective that would be great to talk to one day.
For sure.
But yeah, it was great to talk to Tammy, and like she's obviously insanely experienced. To make elk carpaccio and all that kind of stuff, like I think we got to aspire to try some of that stuff.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a
The,
smoker, so we should be able to do it.
Yeah, for sure. The backstrap we did at Kevin's place, it was the elk backstrap at Christmas time. That thing was like raw, and it was amazing, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, really
See,
good.
yeah.
Everybody enjoyed it. So it was like my wife, my sister, Kevin's wife, and my mom, all of us. So you always worry about when you're cooking for your wives or women, that they're going to be grossed out by it, right? But they loved it, and Kevin made a really nice sauce with it too, which
That's the
what we're
key.
just talking about is
Yeah.
you just drizzle some of that sauce on there. I think it was more of like an Asian-y sauce. It was really good. So I think that's what takes it to the next level. The roast that I did that I posted on Instagram, I was going to bring it up, but didn't get a chance. What I did was I cooked that one at 225, so it was slow. I think it took about an hour to do it. So I made a dry rub that was just like salt, pepper, cayenne, cumin, and a bit of garlic salt or something like that. I just kind of used what I had. So it had a bit of heat with the cayenne in there, which was nice. I didn't do too much. And then basically it was still a little bit frozen when I took it, or like I put it in the fridge. I let it thaw for a bit, like a few hours on the counter, put it in the fridge overnight. It was pretty much thawed, but I brought it out for a couple more hours. And while it was still thawing, that's when I put the rub on there that I'd made. Left it, kind of let it come up to room temperature for like the rest of the afternoon, a couple hours or something like that. Be careful, obviously, leaving meat out for extended periods, but
You should be pretty good with
Yeah.
this stuff though, because it didn't go through the packaging process of industrial meat, right?
exactly, yeah. So what I did is I have a Dutch oven. It's a Le Creuset. It's really nice. It seems like everything I cook in there tastes pretty good. But while the oven was preheating, I put it in there and brought the Le Creuset up to temperature as well. So when I put in the roast, it was already hot. And before I put the roast in, I just put a bit of olive oil and then dropped it in there, cooked it for at least an hour. And then when it got to, it was like bang on 125. I think I sent you a photo when I
Right.
took it out. And I think it's called a reverse sear. So rather than searing
Yes.
it before, you do it after.
Almost like a sous vide.
Yeah. So I just quickly, I had a cast iron pan ready to go, all heated up with butter, tossed it in there and just seared each side of it, and then wrapped it in tin foil on a plate and just let it sit for, I had to wait for Ashley, so I think it was sitting there for like 20 minutes or something like that, but it was still warm when we ate it. And it was the outside pieces were like medium, and then as you got more to the middle, it was a thicker piece in the middle. It was more rare, and those are the pieces that I ate. But for Ashley, like when we got to the middle stuff there, she wanted to have more, but we just quickly seared each side of that again, and then for like 10 seconds aside kind of thing, just got the cast iron hot again, cut like little steaks out of it, just each side, and then it was perfect. Cool. Yeah.
See, that's what the crazy thing about cooking. You see, you can go about it so many different ways. Because I posted a picture on our Instagram. There's an orange North Arm Knives knife in the photo, but that photo is of an elk backstrap. So what we did, like an elk backstrap is 5 or 6 inches wide, something like that, and we cut them almost in a square. So we have a bunch of squares of these backstraps. They're basically like little roasts. But what I did was kind of the opposite, where I had a cast iron pan. I threw it on the stovetop, got that thing searing hot, seared all the sides, had my oven at 400 ready to go, hucked it in there, and I put my meat thermometer in because I don't mess around.
Yeah, me neither.
Right? Like, I'm not worried about my pride. I just want this. I'm not going to make any mistakes with this meat.
Yeah.
So I set it for 125. As soon as it hit 125, it took about 25 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then it hit that. I took it out. I removed it from the cast iron pan, put it on a cutting board, and let it sit for about 10 minutes. And then I sliced it open, and that's what the picture on Instagram is.
Nice.
And yeah, it worked out. But same thing as you. I put the rub on early and let it sit there for, I don't know, an hour or two.
Yeah.
And yeah, it worked out great. So
Nice.
I think you can go about it different ways, and as long as you're paying attention to that final temperature.
Yeah.
I think you're right, though. If you're going to do it on a slower, gradual cook, then maybe it's good to do the reverse sear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it worked out really well.
Yeah.
It didn't taste gamey at all. It was super tender. Ashley's a teacher, and we've got an international student staying with us that is going to her school. So they've got a program where they bring in kids from all over the place. She's been eating a lot of wild game meat, and she's been loving it, which is pretty cool.
Does she know it's wild game meat?
Yeah, she knows for the most part, I think. I don't know if she knew what the roast was that we did the other night.
Yep.
But anyways, so I cooked this big roast. We had dinner. They both brought some for lunch the next day. There was still lots left over, and I picked up some of those milk buns from Okanagan Grocery here that are unreal, just so we could have those for lunch. And so I go to make my lunch this morning, and all of the meat is gone. So I was kind of annoyed, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, obviously they enjoyed it that much that they didn't even leave me any. Nice. Yeah.
So have we talked about the, speaking of food, have we talked about the BNA? So for folks that aren't in Kelowna, BC, there's a restaurant here called Rod's, R-A-U-D-Z.
Yeah.
And in terms of the chef working there, Rod Butters, and the product that he puts out on the plate is just unreal.
If you're in Kelowna, go to Rod's.
Yeah. They use all local suppliers and food and all that kind of stuff. So, and everybody knows we're a fan of Four Winds Beer, who are based in Vancouver. So they got together with BNA, which is a local pub restaurant, and they're actually a brewery themselves. Own, yeah. So they all got together and had this big collaborative dinner, which I posted some photos on Instagram. And what they did was they had a 5-course meal, and each meal had a beer pairing, and it was just amazing. Unreal. One of my favorite nights in Kelowna in the last 10 years.
Yeah, man. It was only $60 each.
Yeah, and it all went to the BC Cancer Foundation.
Yeah.
So nobody even profited from it.
Man, they could have charged, I hope they don't hear this, they could have charged over $120.
Oh, yeah, they could double it easy.
Yeah.
So we're talking like first course was Sterling Springs chicken pate en croûte, smoked maple syrup, and all this stuff. It turns out that they actually had chicken heart in the middle of it.
Right.
And then afterwards they were like, if you haven't eaten chicken heart, you have now. So they had all these surprises throughout the
I love that
evening.
they did that, because we always sort of like say I wouldn't do that to people because they wouldn't like it, but nobody seemed to mind.
No, it was awesome. And then your second course was like miso and sake cured sablefish.
That was
with
good.
Scallops and braised lamb neck, bison Wellington, like just
The
course
bison
after
was the
course.
last one. I was so full, but I'm like, I can't waste this. So
You can't not eat it.
I finished it off, and I'm like, oh man, I feel like I'm gonna explode.
Yeah.
I didn't eat dessert because I was so full.
And they had a big dessert plate, which just check out the picture. They basically put 4 tables together and just threw dessert all over it.
Yeah, they were
It was like a painting
spreading
almost.
it was like a piece of art. They were spreading like chocolate sauce all over the table, and it was pretty cool, man. Yeah, that was a great event. Props to everybody who put that on, and we got to meet the brewmaster from Four Winds. I forget his name.
Brent?
Sure, yeah, it was Brent. Brent, you do great work.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun, man. That was great.
Yeah, that was awesome. I hope they do that. I don't know if it'll be an annual thing, but if it is, I'll buy a ticket every year.
Yeah, I'd say it was a success. So I'd imagine they probably want to do it again.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Mr. Mullner, should we wrap up episode 30?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to take some meat out of the freezer and see what I can do with it.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd have some tonight, but apparently not. It's gone.
I've also got a bunch of fish in the freezer. I've got some halibut and some salmon
Nice.
that I need to get rid of before I go on this fishing trip this year.
Nice.
So, got to keep the freezer stock first in, first out, right?
I know when it starts to get low, you're like, shit, I gotta get something. Bear's next.
Yeah.
Yeah. But cheers to 1 year of podcasting, and thanks to everybody who's been listening. It's grown like crazy, and there's all kinds of wild opportunities that have come from this thing, and we're getting to meet all kinds of great people, and we've got some interviews coming up here that we're super excited about.
One of the things I've learned is that the hunting community in North America is actually it feels small. Like once you get involved, one person knows a few people and they know everybody.
Exactly.
Like it doesn't take long to start meeting some of these people, and that's kind of a cool.
That's where
cool
we're at
thing,
now.
right?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm very happy to be part of the hunting community and to be involved with all these great people, and I think you and I got lots of work to do as far as our role and our ability to reach people and inspire people. So just a huge thanks for everybody, and some of you guys who are listening have been here since day one, which is pretty rad. We've learned a lot since last year, and it's only going to get better. So big thank you to everybody who's supporting the show.
Definitely.
We love doing it, so we'll continue to do so. Should we leave it on that?
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Happy hunting.